Hoi hoi folks, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name's Sean, aka Uncle Frogface, and welcome to today's video. If you're new here, then welcome. If you're not new, then welcome back. And if you're not new, you'll know that on this channel, we like to just have fun with different arts and craft supplies and different materials. But occasionally, I need to have a bit of downtime and do different things. And for me, that's usually playing computer games. And I'm by no means a gamer. But I like to dip my toe in occasionally and see what's new. And a new game that's caught my eye at the moment is a game called Valheim. So if you've not heard of Valheim, it's like a procedurally generated game. It's a survival game. It's for like 1 to 10 players. It's got a Viking theme. So far, from what I've been playing with a few friends, it's really, really fun. But there's a particular character right at the very start, and he's kind of your guide through the game, which I thought would be fun to recreate in polymer clay. So that is going to be today's video. So we're going to swap over camera and we'll get into that. And here we are. So first thing we need to do, same as all of our polymer clay sculptures, is to make a base. I wanted to make quite an organic base, like a little mound with a stone on top for the character to sit on top of. So this character's name is Hugin. Hugin is a raven, one of 2 ravens in Norse mythology, and they fly across Midgard, and they're kind of agents of Odin. They bring him lots of information and the news from around the realms. So Hugin from the Old Norse means thought, and munin means memory or mind. So it's fitting this kind of mythological character would be your guide in the start of the game and tell you what things are and how to do things. I love crows, I love ravens, I love corvid birds, so when this character came out I was just like, I have to do something with this. At the very start of the game you spawn into a ring of stones, and you first see Hugin on top of a rune stone, so that is what I wanted to be the inspiration for the base for this piece. So I've got all my pieces in cardboard, stuck them together with masking tape as normal, and I'm just going to cover everything in tinfoil, aluminum foil, just to give it a good coverage so that we can then stick our clay on top of that. And then we've got a really solid base to go forward and create the character on top. And there we are. So now I've got my base, my kind of foundation done. I'm using Super Sculpy medium and Super Sculpy liquid clay to kind of stick everything together. So that's really good for sticking wet clay to dry clay or to any other surface. It kind of creates a really nice bond. And I just want to cover this whole piece. The bottom part is kind of ground. And it's a fairly low poly game, so I don't want it to be too detailed. But yeah, the bottom is ground, so kind of dirt and grass, and then obviously the upright part is going to be our rune stone. So I'm just going to cover the whole base in liquid clay and slabs of this medium Super Sculpey. And then once I've kind of got everything blocked in, I'm going to do exactly the same for the stone and try and keep this a little bit flatter. Do the front, smooth it in, and this is all really rough and ready at the moment. I'm not really too worried about the details right now. So with this bit I had a bit of overhang, so I was able to pinch the back to kind of get it all closed in together, and then come in with a knife to get a really nice straight edge. Okay, so I'm just going to put that to the side for now, and I'm actually using 3 different types of clay in this. It's all Super Sculpey, but for the actual body of Hugin I wanted to use something that was going to create a kind of armature underneath that I could work on top of. So I'm using Super Sculpey Ultralight, and this is my first time using this, and it's like working with marshmallow. It's really soft, really light, but actually once you've kind of got it to where you want it to be, and you've baked it, it gives a really light and solid foundation to be able to build on top of later. So I was really happy with that. So after it was baked, this was the kind of framework that I had to build the body on top of. So now I'm going back to our base piece, and I've got this tool here, and like I said, it's quite low poly, so I wasn't really too worried about making it overly detailed, but I wanted to give that differentiation between the ground and the grass. So I'm just going in with this tool and I'm roughing up the area I want the grass to be, and this will kind of make it a lot more apparent when we come to the painting stage a little bit later. But I'm just going to go around the whole edge putting in our grass texture. And now it's time for the actual rune plaque at the front, which I know the rune actually has a name. I can't remember what it is, but it kind of represents all of the branches of the world tree. So I've just got this circle of clay, and I'm just smoothing down the edges. But before I attach it, I want to give texture both to the main stone and to this stone. So I have a piece of flint, and I'm just going to go across, and this is a clean stone that is for some reason in my craft box, and I'm just going to press it in different areas, in different ways, rotating it around, flipping it around, and it just gives a really nice natural stone texture. I'm going to go over the whole stone like this, and of course if you've got different stones, use different stones, use whatever you feel will give you a really good texture. You don't just need to press it in, you can drag like that, gives really nice flat areas. But I love this. I'm definitely going to use this in the future for kind of terrain type things. And again, we kind of got this dirt area at the front, so why not give it a bit of texture while I'm there? And now I'm just going to use a little bit more liquid Sculpey and attach our kind of plaque to the front. Smooth it into the ground because this is kind of partially buried, and to give that kind of half buried look, I'm going to come in with the same tool we used to create the grass and make it look like the grass is kind of growing up the side a little bit, and then just smooth it into the main stone. So now I'm actually drawing in the runestone, and I do have a reference for this on the computer. I'm not worried about being too accurate, you know, this is just for me, but I want to be kind of a little bit accurate, you know, just don't want to do my own thing. I want to follow a pattern, so knocking the camera about there, and I'm using a couple of different tools here because when you kind of scribe into clay, you can see it pushes up the edges and creates ridges, and sometimes that's okay, sometimes it's not. It was fine for this, it gave a more of a kind of carved look, but if you want to avoid that, then start from the inside of your line, work outwards, and use a flat sharp tool. If you use a rounded tool like this, it's going to give those kind of ridges and furrows. But again, I wasn't too worried with this one, but if you wanted to get nice, kind of very delicate, straight lines, then use a sharp, flat tool like a blade. We've just got a few more to do. Okay, and then for the last little bit of this, before we bake, I've just got these extra little bits of clay that I'm sticking down as stones. And then we need to make holes in the top for where Hugin's feet are going to go, and then we can bake this piece ready. And here we are, it's out of the oven, it's all dried and cooled down, and it's time to work on our main guy Hugin, get this crow going. And for this I'm using regular Super Sculpey, so this is our third type of clay on this sculpture. Again, I'm used to using the kind of medium, so it's a bit more firm than the regular, and you can just see how easy it is to tear this, and you can really kind of smush it around, which I can see some definite different applications for this. It's got a nice fleshy colour as well. You can get it in different colours, but its flesh tone is quite nice. And all I'm really doing here is I'm just covering the whole thing, so I've got a nice base to be able to build further details onto. And once I've got the body and kind of top of the legs fleshed out, I want to get a good shape for the head, and I'm just doing this with my fingers, just pinching out the shape that I want, smoothing it over. That's about right, but I wanted a bit of extra height on the head, so I'm just adding this little bit in here as a neck, just again smoothing it out with my fingers and my thumb, And then we can do the same with the head, and you can see already how he's coming together, this nice crow shape. I'm just going to come in with the back of a spoon tool to really get a nice smooth transition between all of those pieces. Straighten up that beak. Okay. And once I'm happy with that, I want to refine this beak a little bit more, kind of give it a little bit more definition, smooth everything out. And there's a little bit under the beak that I wanted to adjust as well. And then I'm just using the kind of the shaft of the tool to run along the ridge of the beak, just to separate the head from the beak and to give that impression. And then this tool just happened to be exactly the right shape for the eyes. So once I'm happy with the kind of the underlying body, I'm just going to snip those little bits of wire and position him on top of the stone. And now it's time to make his tail. So I've got another piece of armature wire, and I'm just going to cover the edges with the clay. So I'm kind of laying it on top, cutting out, leaving a little bit of an overhang, and then I can pinch over and smooth that all out. And once I've got a shape that I'm happy with, so I can trim the edge there, I'm just going to come in and add a few little feather details. Nothing major, you know, a pretty low poly game, and then I can smooth that on top. So this position actually is a little bit too far back on the body, so I smoothed it all in and then realised that actually it needed to be a bit further forward, so I just took it off, moved it forward, and did exactly what I'm doing here, just smoothed it in, and we get exactly the same kind of transition, but just a little bit further on up onto the body. So for the wings, I've just cut these two shapes out of a slab of clay, and it really is just a case of coming in, marking in some details, and again keeping it pretty loose, not overly detailed on the wings. I'm putting in a little bit of detail just because when we come in later with the paint, I want something to be able to be picked up when we're doing a bit of dry brushing. So I'm just putting in some ridges for what the kind of the main long feathers of the wings of birds have. Long feathers at the end and short feathers up towards the shoulders. And then this part here, this explorer tool, I'm just using the bend of that to put in kind of the short feather details, which I think worked quite nicely. And just coming in and adding a little bit more texture there. And then it's just a case of placing them where we want them on the body. And we're just going to pop them on and then smooth in the middle. That's not quite right. Let's move that again. There we are. And use whatever tools you need, whether that's a hard tool or a soft silicone tool like this, or just your fingertips. There we go. You can see it's really starting to take shape now. And I wanted to add a bit of texture between that transition of body and tail. So these are just little pinched off pieces of clay. I'm just coming in, putting them where I want them to be, and then I can smooth them out with a tool later. Okay, so he also has, well, all ravens have kind of shaggy feathers around their neck and anywhere there's really a bend in their body, but it's really prevalent on the neck and the back of the head. So I'm just coming in with this strip with some notches cut out, and I'm going to blend it in, and that will give a little impression of those feathers there. And I'm going to do a couple of lines of this just to really emphasize those shaggy feathers around the neck. So there's another piece, and you know, this is not exact in the shape or anything. It's just a case of getting that in, and then you can really shape it out with the tools afterwards and give any extra definition that you want. Adding a bit of extra shape to the beak just there, and putting in the tip there to differentiate between the top and the bottom part of the beak. Give a nice little sharp point. And ravens have this little tuft of like really downy feathers at the top of their beak, so between their head and their beak. So I just wanted to add a little bit of detail with that there. And then with the eye ridges, So the eyebrows really make the eye sockets pop. So I'm just popping that in. These just little tiny snakes of clay that I pressed on into position and then smoothed in with the tip of a silicone tool. So I wanted to add a few more of those kind of loose feather details at the back of the head as well. So we're doing exactly the same as we did with the neck, but we're just doing that on the back of the head and layering it up. Again, not being too exacting, and just wherever I feel we want a few more feather details, I'm going to put those in. One there to cover up that patch. Okay, so Hugin in the game has 2 leather patches. He has one on his back and he has one on his chest, both of them with rune symbols on them. So I'm just pressing out these little rectangles of clay. I'm just marking in the runes, the actual symbols that he has in the game, and then we're going to put the one on the back there. Just press it into position. And again, the one on his chest. I'm going to press that in position. Just lightly press that down because it's wet on wet. It should stick nicely. And I'm going to take a snake of clay, roll it out really thin, and this is attached on his front and back by little thin leather strips. So we're just going to do that with a snake of clay across there like that. Got a little one on the back, so I'm just going to come in with a tiny snake of clay just to put that there, and I'll blend that in so there's no transition. And just flattening that down as well with the edge of the silicone tool. I've got one more to go at the bottom of the chest piece. And there we are, that's all of the sculpted pieces except for his feet. So again, small kind of pinched off pieces of clay, thinner at one end to give that pointy toe shape. And we've got 3 toes at the front and 1 toe at the back, which kept falling off. Now I realised that it was just going to keep falling off, so I used a bit of liquid clay to stick those in position. Did that for both feet and then blended them in. And then after a little bit of final kind of polish, adding a few minor details, I gave it a bit of a brush over with some baby oil just to smooth out any transitions that I thought were a bit bumpy, and then it was off to bake. So he is now fully baked and cooled down, and here is the final sculpt, and it's time to paint. So the stone itself I'm going to keep grey, but we're going to start firstly with the little dirt section down the bottom here. So this is a bit of raw umber and yellow ochre, just to give a bit of variation in tone. I'm trying very hard just to paint the dirt down here. So using some small brushes to get in those nooks and crannies. And then onto the grass. So I'm laying down a darker wash first, and I go over this a couple of times just to get a really good coverage, and between coats of paint I'm hitting this with a hairdryer just to speed up the process so that we're not waiting for bits to dry. But once I've got my base layers in, I'm coming in with some light green now, and I'm just doing a dry brush. So I've got hardly any paint on my brush. I've really brushed most of it off, and this is a stiff bristled kind of disposable brush, and by going very lightly over the surface we get some highlights on the top areas, on the kind of raised areas, and all of the low areas keep that dark colour. And now with a very small paintbrush I'm coming in and painting the kind of glowing red area on the runestone, and once that is all done, a couple of coats needed for that, I'm giving the actual stone itself a bit of wash. I'm not painting it, but I wanted to give a bit of variation in tone. So this is very watered down black paint. It's like a splash of water with a dot of black paint in there, and just wash it over and then wipe away all of the excess with a tissue, and did that on the stones as well. And then finally I wanted to add a bit of kind of creeping moss. So this is the same greens I used for the grass to give a bit of continuity. Laying in a dark colour and then coming over and just lightly tapping again with a dry brush to give some highlights to the moss. And that is all of the base painted now. And now it's time to start on Hugin, and I'm doing this by coming in first of all with a very small paintbrush to paint his toes. So I didn't want to get any black on the stone at all, so I'm coming in. This took absolutely ages, but once that was done I could come with a nice big brush and give him a nice thick coat of black paint, making sure I'm getting all of the nooks and crannies so there's no raw clay showing through. And there he is. So once that's all fully dried, so I hit it with a hairdryer and then left it for a while to really dry, I'm coming in with a very light blue. So this is some white with a dark blue hue, just to give a kind of light colour that will actually show up on the black. If you just went in with a blue, it wouldn't show up, so that white helps it to show. And I just want to kind of bring out some of the details, again by dry brushing, and in the game he does have a slightly blue hue. And then I'm painting the leather sections just with some of that umber colour, that burnt umber, cleaning up any spots as I go, making sure I get that front chest piece as well. And we're nearly done. We have final details, which are his eyes. So he has light blue glowing eyes in the game, so we're just going to pop those in and give those a couple of coats. And now he's all dry and ready to go on the shelf on display. There he is, Hugin the Crow, on top of his runestone, ready to give me any advice that I might need when I'm playing the game, or just doing anything in general. But yeah, he's going to go up with some of my other sculptures. So I really hope you enjoyed today's video. As always, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.